This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, emerging market stocks look set to snap a three-day streak of gains. MSCI's index of emerging market equities was flat to weaker on the day. Now, traders say it's a combination of nervousness ahead of a U.S. Fed meeting and, of course, the G7 decisions coming out this week. Meanwhile, South Africa's JSE all-share little change today, and that's despite closing at its best level in nearly 2 weeks on Monday. Now, also coming up on today's show, South Africa's largest trade unions turn to the Reserve Bank to push down lending rates further and ease pain on debt-laden workers. And global investments in energy to rebound by nearly 10% in 2021. And the coronavirus pandemic pushes online shopping in Ghana to greater heights. Well, let's start off today's show in South Africa. The country's largest trade union federation, COSATU, is calling on the Reserve Bank to assist poor South Africans. The union wants the central bank to cut rates further so that commercial banks can ease up on customers with heavy debts and, of course, those that need to borrow money. Here's CGTN Sumitra Naidu with more.
Since COVID hit in 2020, the South African Reserve Bank cut rates by 300 basis points. The repo rate for commercial banks is currently at its lowest point in history at 3.5%, while the interest rate for citizens is at 7%. COSATU believes there is room for further relief.
Firstly, it is going to help the economy. But secondly, many of these people are highly indebted. They are defaulting on their debts. And we are hoping that this will give them some kind of relief, especially workers who are losing cars, who are losing houses. They need some kind of relief from government.
Inflation has lifted from its lows but remains moderate. It's clear the Reserve Bank is done with rate cuts for now. In fact, according to the bank's projection model, 2 rate hikes are likely this year.
It's unlikely that we will see, for instance, a further cut in interest rates. Our current interest rates are at a 50-year low. It's been as low only in 1973. So already interest rates have been cut aggressively. And in the meantime, as we see economies, recovering from the COVID pandemic, we have also started to see prices increasing. So some inflation creeping into the system.
GDP data out last week showed the economy grew by 1.1% in the first 3 months of this year and has grown for the third quarter in a row. But it is still 2.7% smaller than it was in the fourth quarter of 2020. Unemployment is at a new record high of 32.6%.
South Africa has been in this quagmire for over a decade. COVID just made matters worse. Some argue that COSATU is banging on the wrong door.
Almost 50% of South Africans of working age are really unemployed. And we are close to 21 million people who are dependent on social grants. We just need some kind of relief, because if you look at the GDP numbers, they are positive in a sense, but they are also hiding a bigger story. The fact that the majority of South Africans are really sinking.
So, I totally understand, that COSATU would like to be part of, the drive to get the economy better, but it's perhaps just a matter of tweaking the focus a bit. Away from monetary policy per se, but rather to do more the actual operational part of the economy. What can government do to make the environment more favorable for economic growth to happen?
The next meeting on rates will be in July. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And still in the country, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa last week lifted the license exemption cap for independent power generation plants from 1 megawatts to 100 megawatts. Now, the move was to help address the country's electricity crisis, which of course has been weighing down economic growth. Angelo Coppola now picks up that story.
It exceeds calls from business to increase the threshold to at least 50 megawatts and allows the so-called embedded generation plants to provide electricity to the national grid and also to sell it to third parties.
It really does open the door in the short term, and by that I mean about 18 months, to about 5,000 to 6,000 megawatts of new generation coming on stream at no cost to the taxpayer, at no cost to the Treasury, no guarantees required from government. So this is a huge step forward.
The mining sector is raring to go. It's a heavy user of electricity.
The supplements what Eskom can't maintain and keep on the grid and need to expand. And the mining sector, I mean, we buy between 15 and 25% of Eskom's generation capacity. So, and we will keep on buying that. This just gives us, people are talking about 20 to 30% leeway.
Mining company Goldfields announced in February that it would be building a 40 megawatt plant at its South Deep operation near Johannesburg.
We will be sticking with our 40 megawatt plant, but we'd be foolish not to explore opportunities to take advantage of lifting the cap. We obviously need to link this to our energy requirements and phase it in over a period of time. And we will be looking at opportunities in this regard. As much as we want to say it's about the mining sector, it's about the country. I know the mining sector's got about 1.6 gigawatts, about 27 billion rands worth of expenditure waiting to go. That in itself is a good impetus into the economy.
We need to be just a little cautious. It has not yet been gazetted into law, and it's in the hands now, I guess, of the DMRE and NERSA to take that step to bring it into law.
This move by the government is set to be a game changer, provided all the regulations are in place and the red tape is reduced. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And moving on now, global investment in energy is set to rebound by nearly 10% in 2021 to $1.9 trillion. That is after last year's drop that was caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, according to a new report from the International Energy Agency, spending on clean energy transitions needs to accelerate much more rapidly in order to meet climate goals. Now, it also revealed that the global power sector investments are set to increase by around 5% in 2021 to more than $820 billion, and that's its highest ever level. That's after staying flat in 2020. Well, let's delve further into that report. We're joined by Dickens Kamugisha. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Africa Institute for Energy Governance. Great to have you on the show with us today, Mr. Kamugisha. Now, as global investments in energy rebound this year, experts are also pointing to greater government backing on infrastructure projects and certainly a better business environment in terms of more accommodative monetary policy stances coming from central banks. Do you agree with this? What, in your assessment, is driving this rebound in energy investments?
Yeah, thank you very much. And it is important that we appreciate this report and the rebound in the investments in the energy sector. But in Africa, I think we need to look at these developments in a manner that fits our situation, because the impacts of COVID have made our countries actually to weaken, and I believe the companies are taking advantage. When you hear that monetary policy, infrastructure, I think the governments are giving a lot of compromises to companies, and I think the companies are taking that advantage to invest during the time when they can get good conditions, good terms and conditions. And it may be the reason why we are seeing more investments coming at a time when most of the governments are really trying to attract the few investors. But in the process, I think some of our governments are not getting the best deals, even when the investments are increasing.
Now, it's interesting. The IEA noted that investments continue to shift towards electricity and the power sector continues to dominate that list. Now, it also found that renewables are dominating investments in new power generation capacity going forward. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think those facts are true for the continent?
I think that to some extent, we see the truth. There are many countries in Africa which are getting more investments in renewable energy. And unfortunately, we haven't, even the International Energy Agency is not telling us whether those renewable investments are actually appropriate to our conditions in Africa. There are areas where you find most of those renewable investments are again generating power for the grid. And yet most of our people actually cannot afford the power from the grid. So we even don't know whether those investments are actually going to help Africa achieve the objectives of helping the poor people to get clean energy, diverting people from cutting forests to use the clean energy. So that is the challenge that is still there. And I hope more research is going to be done on what kind of renewable investments are appropriate and can help majority Africans.
That's quite an important point, Mr. Kamugisha. And even the report says that though renewables dominate those investments, these increased energy investments are not bringing us any closer when we talk about our climate goals going forward. So what progress do you think Africa has seen then in terms of spending on clean energy transitions, which of course are needed to meet those climate goals?
Yes, and that's an area where I think there is need for debate, there is need for consultations, because the investors who are investing this money, the governments that are attracting the investors, they need to consult widely amongst the people and appreciate. If you want to invest $100 billion in generating this power, it is powerful who? How is it going to enable the poor person in the rural areas to move away from destroying the environment, destroying those areas that would actually help us attain the climate change goals by moving away from the dirty fuels to clean energy? That is an area that we need to consult widely. And I don't think the huge investments per se are going to enable us attain. We need to understand what works for people and how those people are going to participate in decision making about those investments. We need to do it as a matter of urgency, and we need to invest in those consultations.
Well, shifting focus to another part of the report, it also mentioned that spending on fossil fuels, for example, the upstream oil and gas investments or sector, that will remain well below pre-crisis levels going forward. We're seeing oil majors keeping oil and gas spending flat this year. Now, given that Africa is mostly commodity dependent, many of our largest nations depend on the oil and gas sector. The report points to the fact that we will see diverging strategies amongst different oil and gas companies going forward. What have you observed so far, and how do you think this will impact the continent?
I believe really it is going to take some time to stabilize in the fossil industry. First and foremost, the companies must also try to comply with the objectives of the Paris Agreement on climate change. And that's why we are seeing even companies here in Uganda trying to diversify, saying they want to increase the investments in renewable energy. So when they try to diversify, spend their money in different energy sectors, including the renewable energy, it means the investments that would go to fossil fuels will actually remain less, and it may take long to increase that area. But what is very clear is that we also see that actually the companies are taking advantage of the vulnerability of the countries. Like Uganda here, I can give an example where you find it is at this time when the companies and the government are rushing to invest more money to start production of oil. without even following the terms and conditions that would help us comply with the climate change goals. And that is an area. So in some areas, the investments will remain less, but in some areas, the companies are going to take advantage of the vulnerability of the impacts of the climate change of the governments. And at the end of the day, we may not see something that would help us as a country, as a people, to move forward.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Kamugisha, for those great insights. We do have to leave it there. That, of course, is Dickens Kamugisha. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Africa Institute for Energy Governance. Well, let's move on now. Italy's Justice Ministry has ordered an inquiry into the conduct of two prosecutors in a corruption case involving energy groups Eni and Shell in Nigeria. Now, the case revolved around the $1.3 billion acquisition of a Nigerian oil field a decade ago, which both firms were acquitted for. Milan prosecutors Fabio De Pascal and Sergio Spadaro were placed under official investigation by magistrates earlier this month for allegedly not filing documents that will have supported Eni's position. The Justice Ministry said in a statement it had decided to move in the wake of the judicial investigation and following criticism of the pair by the trial judges. And on that note, let's take a look at other corporate headlines today. Emirates Airline says the government of Dubai will inject an extra $1.1 billion in order to support it through the coronavirus pandemic. The airline posted a record annual loss of $5.5 billion, the first in more than 3 decades. Now, the airline got a $2 billion lifeline last year from the Dubai government. And Portuguese football superstar Cristiano Ronaldo caused a commercial stir when he removed 2 bottles of Coca-Cola, which sponsors the tournament, away from him as he entered a news conference. He then held up a bottle of water to the media, dismissing the famous sugary drink. Ronaldo has a huge following and has built a reputation as one of the hardest workers in the game. Meanwhile, Red Bull showcased its Formula One car across the streets and landmarks of the Czech Republic and Slovakia, culminating in an incredible stunt that saw a Red Bull plane fly inverted closely above an F1 car driven by former F1 championship driver David Coulthard. Now, Coulthard had a mirror installed in his cockpit that was tilted in order to allow him to see the plane flying above him, while pilot Martin Sonker said he could see the car and had to look ahead to judge the height of the plane. And a French court has ordered home furnishings giant IKEA to pay more than $1.2 million in fines and damages over a campaign to spy on union representatives, as well as employees and some unhappy customers in France. Now, 2 former IKEA France executives were convicted and fined over the scheme and given suspended prison sentences. And that is a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's now take a short break, still coming up on the show. Zimbabwe goes cashless as mobile phone payments account for the bulk of transactions. And we look at a market in Nairobi that's working to reduce food prices by linking farmers directly to consumers.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. Well, let's go to Zimbabwe now. The country has been hailed as one of the leading digital innovators on the continent, and that's due to the growth of its mobile money payment platforms. These now account for the majority of transactions in the country. And here's CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya with more details from Harare.
A market where hard cash was formerly king has been rapidly transformed into a predominantly cashless marketplace. According to the World Bank, there are over 7.5 million mobile wallets registered here, out of an estimated 14 million population.
We are a country that has got at least 91–92% literacy rates, which means we are ready to embrace technology whenever it comes our way. On another note, remember, we are a country that is driven by digital money. When I say digital money, we like our EcoCash, we like our mobile money, and we don't have physical money. That means 96% of our transactions are what? Are electronic.
The growth has been driven not just by the long-running shortage of bank notes, but also the convenience that mobile transactions offer and a government push to widen financial inclusion. Due to the highly informalized nature of the economy, as much as 70% of the population is unbanked. That's according to 2020 statistics from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. However, the high prevalence of mobile wallets here means many of those who are unbanked can still be part of the financial ecosystem. Going forward, experts see other forms of digital currency thriving.
Zimbabwe is actually way ahead when you look at accepting this digital currency, mobile money, credit cards and all those things. Yeah, we are on the right path. Everybody now is embracing digital currency. Look at it, even the Reserve Bank is talking about bitcoins being an official currency. In short, it is good because we now have a currency that we can trade in.
Government says it intends to build on the strides made in digital transformation by opening up more community information centers and commissioning mobile base stations in the remotest parts of the country to deepen mobile and internet penetration. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Now, the Egyptian Furniture Export Council says that exports during the first 4 months of 2021 increased by 30% to $87 million. Exports to neighboring Arab nations jumped despite the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. And here's CGTN Yasser Hakim picking up that report.
Walid Abdel Halim owns a furniture plant in one of Cairo's buzzing streets. He says the higher exports recorded lately by the country's furniture industry is a positive sign, despite the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected other economic sectors.
The main reasons for more exports is because freight costs have increased after the outbreak of the coronavirus. Markets like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iraq, and Sudan, who used to import from countries in faraway regions such as China, turned to close suppliers like Egypt. Egypt is known as the carpenter in this region. There's not much competition here. Only Syria posed a challenge, but it has faded due to instability. That leaves Egypt, in addition to Turkey and China, as the dominant players, while Europe has lost its edge because the prices are too high for our region.
Apart from the local market, Egypt's two largest clients are the Gulf nations of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Producers say they try to cater to their clients' unique needs to boost sales.
The Egyptian market requires all wooden furniture for houses and offices, as well as accessories and hotel furniture. Most of the demand locally is driven by homesteads in search of the Egyptian brand, while for exports, hotels in the Gulf states are our main clients. In Africa, we also export to Ghana, Nigeria, Mauritania, and Senegal.
Despite the sale increase recorded during the period, experts say volumes are still low, but there's potential for more growth, and players in the industry are seeking to expand their market share in neighboring African countries.
We are trying to work more in Africa, but we are struggling because of freight costs and the right means for transporting our products. We don't have direct shipments, which makes it very expensive, and therefore it's hard to present it in the African market. We are targeting East Africa now, starting with Kenya, Tanzania, and their neighboring states.
In the meantime, producers are hopeful African governments will fast-track an ambitious land, railway and shipping route project through the continent that will catapult intra-African trade and investments. Yes Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now in Africa, many households spend a significant part of their income on food. In Kenya, the high prices of farm produce have been attributed to inefficiencies in the supply chain between the farmer and consumer. Now one market on the outskirts of the capital, Nairobi, is seeking to address that by linking farmers and customers directly. Here's CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa reporting.
Investors came together to open the Nairobi Farmers Market. It was their way of tackling a problem the whole country grapples with, securing clean, affordable and fresh produce.
We're trying to shorten the journey from the farm to the customer. So this way we're able to connect the farmer with the customer directly, guaranteeing better value for the farmer, better value for the shopper as well.
Alice Mutuma farms and sells organic cereals at the Farmers Market. Without middlemen, accessing markets and turning a profit wasn't easy.
It was such a difficult venture because you farm tomatoes and you don't have a market. Yeah? You don't even have a means of transporting them. So you hire the vehicle, you pay transport. By the time you get here, you don't have a market. They can rot in that vehicle. So you go at a loss.
Middlemen buy produce from farmers who can't access marketplaces and transport it for sale. They have long been blamed for inflating food prices, but they argue that the costs they incur drive up food prices. New regulations for potato farmers, for example, are about to make the crop more expensive.
We are supposed to register ourselves, register the vehicles, register the transporter, and they have the specifications about the produce we can carry. And we don't have to get any assistance from the government.
Agriculture dominates Kenya's economy, feeding the nation and generating income. The price of food is a significant source of risk in developing economies across Africa. Figures compiled by the U.S. Department of Agriculture estimate that Africans spend upwards of 40% of their household income on food. In Kenya, households spend an average of 46.7% of their income on food. A banana here at the Nairobi Farmers Market costs 5 shillings, or the equivalent of about 5 US cents. Having farmers sell directly to their clients means that they can then translate some of those benefits down to their consumers. However, introducing this new concept to the marketplace has not been without challenges.
Part of the reason why their food is so expensive shopping elsewhere is not because it's expensive to produce food in this country, it's just that it's quite inefficient.
By bringing the market closer to buyers, the farmers hope to seal some of the gaps.
If you're conscious about health and what you want to eat, then some of them will tell you, this one I am farming myself, it's organic, this one I'm not. That sincerity. So that helps us, and it gives me the confidence as a consumer.
The market is part of a growing push that includes digital marketing, online and delivery services, all geared towards finding new ways to put food in the hands of consumers. But middlemen still play a large role, and changing the way Kenyans consume their food may require time, policy changes in some instances, and shifting mindsets. Wilkista Nyabwa, CGTN.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break now. Still coming up on the show. United States President Joe Biden in Geneva to meet with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. And we take you on a tour of the world's largest port in China's Ningbo.
No one again, he can hold in guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time now. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
And in other headlines this hour, a suicide bomber has killed at least 15 army recruits at a military training camp in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Now, more than 20 others were wounded when the bomber, wearing an explosive vest, disguised himself as a trainee and entered the General Degobadan military camp in the Medina district. The Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab extremist group has claimed responsibility for the attack. And health authorities at Uganda's National Referral Hospital and the main COVID-19 treatment center say they cannot meet the current oxygen needs for the growing number of patients. The hospital management says the facility has surpassed its installed production capacity of 2,083 liters per minute and is now turning to private firms for oxygen support. And the DRC has also reported a significant increase in COVID-19 cases in the capital, Kinshasa. The city has lately been recording more than 250 cases per day. That's the highest daily total since the pandemic began. The country's president, Felix Tshisekedi, has warned he may be forced to take drastic measures to curb the spread of the disease. And Tunisia marked World Elder Abuse Awareness Day on Tuesday against a backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to data from the World Bank, the North African nation has the highest proportion of elderly people on the continent. Sadly, more than 85% of deaths due to the coronavirus were people aged 65 or older. And that's a recap of today's top headlines. Now let's get you some international news. China has accused NATO of hypocrisy and the United States of being sick after the G7 published a communique criticizing China over issues ranging from Taiwan to trade. Now, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson made the comments in Beijing earlier on Tuesday, and CGTN's Wu Guoxi tells us more.
NATO says China's ambitions and behavior present systemic challenges to the international order and to areas relevant to the alliance's security. In response, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has accused NATO of double standards when it comes to military spending. NATO is calling on member countries to increase their spending to at least 2% of GDP, but at the same time, the Western military alliance has publicly called Chinese spending a threat.
China's national defense budget is 1.3% of its GDP, far from NATO's requirement. China's per capita military spending is lower than the global average and less than 1/5 of NATO's. NATO has a notorious historical record and has a lot of debt. It's brought war and turmoil to the world many times. China will never forget the historic tragedy of NATO bombing the Chinese embassy in Yugoslavia. It's a debt of blood to the Chinese people. China will not pose a systemic challenge to anyone, but China will safeguard its own sovereignty, security and development interests.
The G7 published a communique on Sunday after closing their summit in England. In the document, they criticized China due to its affairs in Hong Kong, Xinjiang and Taiwan. Zhao Lijian said the G7 is slandering China and grossly interfering in the country's internal affairs.
What's being said is a deliberate slandering of China and interferes in China's internal affairs. It's a serious violation of the UN's Charter, contrary to peaceful development and win-win cooperation. It has revealed the efforts of a few countries, such as the US, to create conflict and contradictions. China is strongly dissatisfied with and firmly opposes this. The US is sick. The G7 should take her pulse and prescribe for her first.
China reaffirmed that the era of one country or a group of countries dictating global politics is over. It says multilateralism in the international community is more important than ever, and that forcing other countries into camps goes against the trend of history and is doomed to fail. Uche Okoronkwo, CGTN, Beijing.
Meanwhile, United States President Joe Biden is in Geneva to meet with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. Their first meeting is expected to include U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Now, the sit-down is part of Biden's Europe tour, coming after key meetings of the Group of Seven and NATO leaders. Expectations for the meeting span from arms control agreements to other potential areas of cooperation. Now, since taking office in January, Biden has repeatedly pressed Putin to take action to stop Russian-originated cyber attacks on companies and governments in the U.S. and around the globe. He has also decried the imprisonment of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Now, China's foreign ministry has expressed appreciation for Russian President Putin's positive remarks on China-Russian ties that were made during an interview with NBC News.
China and Russia's relations have weathered the tests in the constantly changing global politics. Bilateral trade surged by 23.6% in the first 5 months. That has injected strong impetus into the global economy that's struggling for recovery. China and Russia have worked together to resist the political viruses and maintain the fruits of the World War II victory. The two countries have become key stabilizing forces in a turbulent world.
Now, a few weeks ago, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin gave the official go-ahead for the construction to begin on 4 new nuclear reactors in China. Now, our Alihosa Milenkovic is in Moscow, where he spoke with the Russian nuclear scientists and officials about what that cooperation means for Russia.
This is Yevgeny Pakirmanov, head of Russia's main exporter of nuclear energy technology, the Rosatom Overseas, a part of the Rosatom State Nuclear Energy Corporation. He has extensive experience collaborating with his Chinese colleagues in all aspects of joint projects in the industry.
This collaboration presents us with absolutely colossal possibilities. The Chinese partners are providing the rhythm. They are building fast, they're built with quality. The reactors we've built together are the most successful, the most effective, and everybody has recognized it.
Sino-Russian collaboration in peaceful usage of nuclear energy started 3 decades ago. Now, many reactors built with Russian technology can be found throughout China, with the nuclear power plant in Tianwan being the largest and the most important one. But that's not where the collaboration ends. The experts say that the future of nuclear energy lies in fusion reactors, and the scientists from both countries are working closely together in that area too. The ITER fusion reactor is a project in which both sides are cooperating with the scientists from many other countries. The multi-billion-dollar project will be the testing ground for many future nuclear technologies, which participating countries could use for their own individual projects. Among those are the Russia's latest nuclear fusion testbed, the tokamak T-15MD in Moscow, and the Chinese tokamak device named East in Hefei.
We have very good cooperation with Hefei, with Chengdu team of fusion scientists, and a number of our Russian equipment now in operation on Chinese best experiments.
One of those groundbreaking experiments took place on May 28th at the aforementioned East, located in Hefei. For 101 seconds, Chinese scientists successfully held the temperature of the plasma inside at over 120 million degrees, something no human has ever achieved previously. Their Russian colleagues in Moscow are proud to have participated in this and many other joint nuclear energy breakthroughs. Alyosha Milenkovic, CGTN, Moscow.
Meanwhile, the US and the European Union have resolved a 17-year-long fight over aircraft subsidies, and they have suspended tariffs for 5 years stemming from the Boeing-Airbus dispute. Now, the truce was formalized in Biden's summit with European leaders Charles Michel and Ursula von der Leyen, who hosted him in Brussels. As part of the deal, the EU and the US agreed to provide research and development funding through an open and transparent process, as well as to not give specific support, such as tax breaks, to their own producers that will harm the other side. Now, the idea is also to collaborate in addressing non-market practices, which are conducted by other countries, including China. Now, Tuesday's big announcement marked Biden's first trip to the EU's headquarters and the first EU-US summit since 2014. Meanwhile, Europe's top court has endorsed the power of national data watchdogs to pursue big tech firms, even if they are not their lead regulators, in a setback for Silicon Valley companies such as Facebook. The EU Court of Justice ruling could encourage national agencies to act against US tech companies such as Google, Twitter, and Apple, which all have their EU headquarters in Ireland. Now, many national watchdogs in the 27-member European Union have long complained about their Irish counterpart, saying that it takes too long to decide on cases. The CJEU got involved after a Belgian court sought guidance on Facebook's challenge against the territorial competence of the Belgian data watchdog's bid to stop it from tracking users in Belgium through cookies stored in the company's social plugins. And Britain and Australia have announced a free trade deal. The British government hailed it as an important step in building new trade relationships following its departure from the European Union. Now, Britain said cars, Scotch whisky and confectionery will be cheaper to sell in Australia because of this agreement, which of course removes tariffs and reduces red tape. Britain is Australia's 8th largest trading partner, and Australia is Britain's 20th largest, with two-way trade worth about $20.7 billion.
This is the first freestanding free trade deal that the UK has done since Brexit. And it's also, therefore, a prelude to further deals. And it's the way in to the comprehensive and progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP. This is important economically. There's no question about that. I'm not going to exaggerate the overall increase in our respective GDPs that will flow from this, but I think it's more important politically and symbolically. We're opening up to each other, and this is the prelude to a general campaign of opening up around the world.
I said we would wait for the right deal, Boris, and I think we've got the right deal between UK and Australia. And that just lays the foundation further for the bigger partnership we have on everything to defence, to climate change, and to deal with the many other big global challenges that liberal democracies face together. And always, UK and Australia will face those together. Where you have challenges with one trading partner from time to time, then the ability to be able to diversify your trade into more and more countries is incredibly important. And I genuinely appreciate the way that the UK have engaged in this agreement because it reflects an understanding of that. And so this provides more opportunities and greater resilience for Australia's exporters all around the world.
And moving on now, antivirus software creator John McAfee has rejected being extradited to the United States at his extradition trial in Spain. Now, McAfee was arrested in Barcelona airport in October, as he prepared to board a flight to Istanbul on a U.S. arrest warrant. U.S. federal prosecutors had unsealed an indictment against McAfee over charges that he evaded taxes and willfully failed to file returns. He also allegedly made over $23.1 million in undisclosed compensation from false and misleading cryptocurrency recommendations.
He delivers an exaggerated, a pretend political militancy to cover what allegedly the United States says, and that he is a tax rebel. He is just that, a person that doesn't want to pay taxes, a millionaire that doesn't want to pay taxes. He is just that.
We really expect that they are going to have under consideration all our allegations, because this is a political trial. That's the real idea, that's the real situation, and we expect to get justice from the Spanish courts.
Now, China's city of Ningbo is known for its strong trade sector. The Chinese city hosts the world's largest port by cargo tonnage, and of course its strong manufacturing sector as well is a steady source for globally competitive goods. CGTN's Lily Liu paid a visit to the Ningbo Zushan port.
I'm now in Meishan Harbor area of the Ningbo Zhoushan port. The port's cargo throughput is more than 1.1 billion tons, and today we can see the port is not only growing bigger but also smarter.
This is the largest port in the world, and we have been #1 in terms of cargo handling capacity for 12 years in a row. We are the most popular port for ships of 100,000-ton class. We have more than 100 shipping berths for 50,000-ton ships.
We're now 49 meters above the ground, and we just witnessed how those gantry cranes are operated. So traditional cranes request on-site operation, but luckily this port has half of its gantry cranes now remotely controlled thanks to 5G technologies. And this will greatly improve the efficiency of the entire port.
We are going to determine the position of the containers by looking at these 6 screens through 19 cameras. We use these 2 game console-like handles to operate our loading and unloading. I think with smart remote control operation, it is a lot more accurate and much safer. In the past, we worked at an altitude of more than 40 meters, bent our backs and bowed our heads for long periods. Now, the working environment of our drivers has been greatly improved, and their careers will be greatly extended. We now have 36 cranes, and 18 of which are remotely operated. Our goal is to achieve remote control operations for all our cranes.
These cargo trucks, they run around the clock in the harbor area, so drowsy driving could pose a high risk. Starting last year, the Meishan Harbor begins to deploy 5G technologies as well as high-precision positioning technologies to transfer the existing trucks into self-driving ones. Now, once these self-driving trucks are mass deployed, they could greatly raise the efficiency and lower labor costs.
Smart port is an important direction for future development. We are going to build a world-class port. This includes several aspects. First-class facilities, such as the Xiangshan port area. Its entire operating system, which used to rely on imported technology, is now independently developed and has been deployed since last year's National Day. With first-class technology, you also saw unmanned key crane, unmanned gantry crane, and unmanned cargo handling in Meishan port area. They have been applied in different fields with good results. What's more, first-class management. The large screen of the main control room can show that we have integrated several aspects of the port, shipping, and cargo into the management platform. The management platform can coordinate several important ports in Zhejiang province, including Ningbo, Zhoushan, Jiaxing, Wenzhou, Taizhou, and so on. Therefore, from the management perspective, we believe that this area can be further improved and deepened in the future.
These applications and explorations that I saw today are only phased achievements, because the scenario for a future smart port will go beyond the container yards and the berth, but really an integrated network of solutions for the ground, the sea, the sky, and even the space. Lulu, CGTN.
And on that note, let's move on to commodity markets today. Oil prices were up, with Brent Brent crude gaining for a fourth consecutive session. Now, the prospect of extra supply coming to the market soon from Iran faded with talks dragging on over the U.S. rejoining a nuclear agreement with Tehran. Meanwhile, gold prices falling for a third straight day as an uptick in the dollar dented the safe havens metal appeal. Coffee prices also falling with rains in Brazil and an improved situation in Colombia, improving the outlook for next year's crop. On that note, let's take a short break. Still coming up. The coronavirus pandemic exposes opportunities in electronic commerce in Ghana.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Now, online shopping in Ghana has taken off due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And while that's happening in several African nations, Ghana's internet economy may also hold the key to reducing unemployment. Now, analysts are saying the growth in e-commerce in Ghana could create jobs for small and medium-sized enterprises. And here's CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai with more on that from Accra.
Naneku Amaku started taking orders online for her grocery shop, Dija, during the lockdown period.
We have a WhatsApp platform that I communicate to my customers. And then I also, every week, I post, I try to, some of the things that's happening, maybe if something is in season, you know, something is out of season, I do a flyer, then I push it around. Even on our social media pages, we do that.
Now, restrictions have been eased, but Nenekuya says online grocery shopping, which has yet to become mainstream in Ghana, is seeing an uptake.
Nenekuya plugs the vegetables before packaging them. This way, people can use them to prepare their meals as soon as they are delivered.
People who rely on such services say it is more convenient than going to the markets to buy groceries on their own.
I'm very busy most of the time, so through online grocery shopping, I save a lot of time. I make payment for the service on my phone using mobile money.
While South Africa, Nigeria and Kenya are the top 3 contributors to e-commerce in sub-Saharan Africa, analysts believe there is a potential for online shopping to thrive in Ghana. The country has more than 15 million people using the internet.
The COVID pandemic ensured the growth of e-commerce and is going to grow because, again, people are now going to get comfortable. People are going to get used to the fact that, oh yeah, I can order this online and it can be delivered to me.
Still, there are concerns people might be defrauded when they try to shop and make payments online.
Once we figure out how our payment platforms work, whether it's easier for me to do Momo transactions, and if there's a problem, I can easily get my refund, it would then trigger the growth of seeing more people using the e-commerce platforms.
Nanekuya Amwaku agrees that a safer way of receiving payments could boost the growth of her online grocery business. And as e-commerce grows in Ghana, she hopes to expand her services across the country. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Now, a young black South African is successfully operating a hydroponic rooftop garden project in the middle of Sandton, South Africa. Sandton is one of the most affluent areas in Johannesburg and is the most important business and financial district in the country. It is often referred to as the richest square mile in Africa. Here's CGTN's Yolisa Njamela with more.
Zandile Khumalo is running the first Sandton hydroponic rooftop farming project. It's quite a unique project that is helping the underprivileged with food security. Hydroponic technology allows for the crops to be grown without soil in special water solutions.
So the advantage of hydroponic farming is that you can get much more yield. You can be able to plant within a smaller space. You can be able to plant without soil. And everything that you use is basically on a neutral base, because the medium that we use is not soil. It's soilless farming. We use cocoa peat. Our produce is clean.
Zandile Khumalo is one of the few young black hydroponic farmers here. Her hydroponic farm is in the middle of one of the most affluent areas here in South Africa.
The location was that, we used to bring produce here in Sandton and cities, and therefore leafy greens is one of the things that can be found so closer that we felt that you can find it closer to where you're at, and actually building it on the rooftop was just an advantage that we're bringing just food closer to the restaurants.
Khumalo believes that most South Africans, especially those living in townships, eat a lot of fast foods. She therefore wishes to grow a variety of crops that can be used by households, such as root vegetables and herbs.
The bigger picture of the project is that the community will benefit, the schools will benefit, where learning curriculums will be put into schools, and also the clients that buy within the restaurant, they benefit the value of the produce, the freshness of the produce, and be able to taste how flavorful the produce it is when it's straight from the farm to the kitchen.
This hydroponic rooftop garden farm is collaborating with the top restaurants in this affluent area.
The greatest thing about our collaboration and the core of it was that we are closing up a value chain of us being able to sell within the shopping center. So we supply restaurants like Signature Restaurant, Pomodoro, Green Peppercorn, and also we've got some people that want to be on board so that we can be able to stride to enough to be able to send out much more produce, get more varieties within the rooftop, and be able to supply.
Hydroponics is quickly gaining popularity in places where traditional farming simply isn't an option. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Sandton, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, before we leave you today, let's take a quick look at Africa's currencies. And of course, emerging market currencies broadly are being supported by a generally weak dollar today. But traders say investors are waiting to see if the U.S. Fed will signal changes in its accommodative policy stance, which is more hawkish bent, and that could send investors fleeing from riskier emerging market assets this week. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.